Thank you everyone for your attendance and participating in this workshop tonight. I'm so pleased to be here today to share with you the preliminary design for the Regional Organics Compost Project, an absolutely critical initiative for the Comox Strathcona Waste Management Service. Our team and I are speaking to you from Courtenay on the traditional and unceded territory of the Comox First Nation. The Regional Organics Compost Project covers the territories of the Wee-Wee-Cum Nation, Wee-Wee-Kai Nation, the Homolko First Nation, and the Comox First Nation. And it is these First Nations that the province has encouraged us to engage with throughout this process. Let's start out by explaining a little bit about the Comox Strathcona Waste Management Service, or CSWM, and how this project will serve our region in the years ahead. The CSWM boundary is large, and we are challenged with managing the waste of several municipalities from both urban and remote communities. Communities such as Zabalis, Gold River, electoral areas including Gulf Islands, Cortez, Quadra. The service is operated by staff from the Comox Valley Regional District, or the CVRD. And our board is comprised of directors, 23 in total, from both the CVRD and the Strathcona Regional District. This slide illustrates the location of our landfills, including the Campbell River Waste Management Center, which is slated for closure in 2022. It will then become a transfer station, and waste from Campbell River and the surrounding region will be transported to the Comox Valley by truck. Conversely, organics collected from the Comox Valley will then be hauled back to the Regional Organics Compost Facility at the Campbell River Waste Management Center. Bear with me for a moment. The Regional Organics Compost Project will divert food and yard waste from 30,000 homes in Campbell River, Comox, Courtenay, and Cumberland, and in turn, convert that into finished compost for agricultural and landscaping use. The compost will be processed and sold in the region, ensuring that the economic and environmental benefits of this product remain within our communities. The facility, its operations and design incorporates best management practices, minimizes impacts to neighbors, and protects the environment by reducing carbon emissions. Hugely impactful for taxpayers are the cost savings that can be realized by removing organics from the waste stream. We will spend $28 million on landfills in the next 17 years if we do not improve our diversion efforts, and this is the best way of doing it. Early in 2020, we reached out to the community to gather input that would help inform the design and operations of this project, and we've responded to that input. We heard from you, and again, it's been incorporated. I'm going to ask now that Cole Mackinson, our Manager of Capital Projects for the service, to take on the role of explaining to you this project in more detail and being there to answer some of your questions. Again, I wish to thank you very much for participating in this tonight. The advantage of this format is it will be available online, as mentioned. Though your neighbors and other interests within our community that don't have the opportunity to participate will see the questions you have, see the answers that we provide. It will be available from our website. So please continue to be engaged with us. And again, thank you.
Thank you, Russell. Today, I'm going to walk you through the design of the transfer station at the Comox Valley Waste Management Center, as well as the design of the compost facility at the Campbell River Waste Management Center. For the purpose of today's presentation, we're going to touch on the top issues identified by the community. Our design addresses a number of other issues, such as noise, traffic, and lighting, so don't hesitate to reach out if you're interested in something we haven't covered. An organic transfer station will be constructed at the regional landfill located in Cumberland. By 2022, when the compost facility is up and running, the landfill in Campbell River will be closed and waste will be transferred by truck to Cumberland. These trailers will then load up with organics from Courtenay, Comox, and Cumberland on their return trip, maximizing trucking efficiencies. The map illustrates the location of the compost facility adjacent to the landfill, about 12 kilometers outside of Campbell River. The site, called Block J, is 19 hectares and zoned for heavy industrial use, with specific zoning for composting. In October 2019, the Agricultural Land Commission approved approximately 6 hectares of the site for non-farm use to be used for the compost facility. This area is outlined here in the green. The vegetation you see on the remainder of the site will remain undeveloped. The site is initially sized to process 14,500 tons of organic waste. As diversion efforts increase in the future and commercial and multifamily sectors come online, the facility will be able to expand in the current cleared area to process up to 29,000 tons of organics. The image here is the general site layout for the compost facility at the Campbell River Waste Management Center. Labeled as number 6, this is the first step in the process where active composting happens. Active composting is the point at which the majority of the odors are produced. Commercial trucks will arrive and be unloaded in the enclosed facility. The compost piles will be aerated and use Gore compost covers to remove a majority of the odors produced during the composting process. A biofilter will treat the air from the primary compost building and remove any remaining odors, labeled number 1 on the site layout. Surfaces are concrete, and any water that comes in contact with the compost, we call leachate. This will be captured and stored in holding tanks, labeled number 5. The leachate is then able to be recycled for pre-wetting the incoming compost to ensure the proper moisture content. Absolutely no leachate will be discharged to the environment, and all unprocessed materials will be stored inside to control odors. Once the primary compost process is complete after 3 weeks, the product will be transferred to the second phase in the process, where the product is allowed to further mature. The secondary compost building is covered and protected from the elements, labeled number 2 on the site layout. Compost will be stored under a Gore cover to further control any remaining odors. The building floor is also concrete to ensure all leachate is captured, and this phase takes an additional 3 weeks. Compost screening, labeled number 3, is the last phase in the process and involves the removal of larger woody debris from the finished compost. Any larger woody debris removed goes back to the beginning stage of the composting process to begin the cycle again. The finished compost will be stored in the covered building, labeled number 4, and will be the point of access for purchase of the product. Stormwater from the central courtyard will be collected in a lined holding pond, labeled number 7, where it will be aerated and sediment will be removed. The resulting treated stormwater will be discharged into an unlined pond and re-infiltrated into the ground, labeled number 8. The water use on site will be managed carefully and will not have an impact on groundwater quality or supply. The photo on the left shows the extensive groundwater monitoring wells around the Campbell River Waste Management Center, which are sampled 4 times per year. The photo on the right shows a similar fabric compost building, which controls stormwater as well as a paved surface and lined ponds, ensuring impacted water does not enter the environment. The facility is a highly regulated site by the British Columbia Ministry of Environment and Climate Change Strategy. The CSWM service has an extensive annual water monitoring program in place to adhere to the testing protocols laid out by the ministry to provide an understanding of groundwater quality. Additional monitoring wells are planned as part of the project, and testing is done quarterly and reported to the ministry. The annual summary of groundwater monitoring reports are available on the CSWM website. The photo attached is a similar composting facility with aerated static piles using Gore compost covers within an enclosed building. The Gore covers will remove odors during the composting process. Gore covers have been successfully used for the pilot composting project at the Comox Valley Waste Management Center. The receiving and processing of organic waste will take place daily within a fully enclosed building. Air within the building will be captured through an HVAC system and then treated using a biofilter, which will remove any remaining odors. The BC Ministry of Environment and Climate Change Strategy administers and regulates air quality issues, including odor issues, under the authority of the Environmental Management Act. We'll be required to adhere to these policies as well as any odor nuisance bylaws. Odor modeling will be completed using worst case scenarios to ensure there will be no impact to surrounding residents. Attached is a bar graph showing the odor released using open pile composting in blue, which is not the process we're using. By using the Gore covers, 90 to 95% of the odor is captured, and any remaining odor will be treated using the biofilter. The attached photo shows how the gore covers are installed on the compost piles. The daily processing of organic material indoors minimizes odors and helps control rodents and pests. Once the material is placed into an active compost pile, temperatures will reach between 50 to 60 degrees Celsius for several days, an undesirable and inhospitable environment for rodents and pests. The pest control plan will also be an important part of the facility operation. The material is moved frequently, reducing opportunities for animals to establish refuge. The facility will be located within the current cleared area of the land shown here. The cleared area around the perimeter of the facility will be fenced, preventing larger wildlife from entering the site. All delivery of compost feedstock and active composting will occur indoors to prevent birds and wildlife from being attracted. The wooded area you see here will be kept around the perimeter of the facility to protect natural habitat as well as mitigate visual impacts. To conclude, the marker in green is where we currently are in our project schedule. Our planning and preliminary design phase is complete, and once we have shared our design with the public, we'll seek to obtain our regulatory approvals. We expect to break ground on construction this fall, 2021. Public education will begin in 2022. This is the time we'll work with municipalities to share information about what can be disposed of as the food waste and the details around curbside pickup. By fall 2022, we're targeting to have our facility fully operational with curbside collection implemented by year end. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thanks very much. We've moved through that fairly quickly. It's 5:20, so we've been underway for just about 15 minutes. We're opening up to Q&A now. There are several comments, questions in the chat. I'll start with those for all the attendees. Please feel free to continue to load up any questions you have there, and I'll keep track of them. I'll group any that are similar. And Cole, perhaps you can decide who on the team here is best placed to answer any detailed questions that come out of the chat. So the first question we have is, will you be accepting residential/individual owners, it just jumped ahead, direct deliveries? I guess their own, organic waste deliveries at the site.
The initial program rollout is for municipalities, Comox, Courtenay, Cumberland, and Campbell River for residential pickup. We are looking at having a drop-off location for residents at the landfills, but we have to look at safety for separation of commercial and residential traffic, but we're looking at options at the landfills for a drop-off.
Thank you. There's two questions I'm going to put to you now from Leroy and from Amy. One is about the fact that information previously distributed states that leachate water will be collected or stored in tanks. When and where is it disposed of? And similarly, Annie asks, are the leachate tanks held above or underground? What material are they made of? And will they need to be replaced at some point? So they're kind of related. And you can use chat to remind yourself as you go through it.
Yeah, the leachate tanks are a double-walled tanks. They are a buried tank, but have a similar to a higher grade than a septic tank, and they do have a lifespan. But and there won't be any trucking of leachate offsite. From the initial feedback, there was discussions of in public engagement back in February last year, concerns about trucking of leachate, and there's an ability to recycle this leachate to pre-wet the feedstock, incoming feedstock, to ensure there's proper moisture content.
I'm sorry, so just for clarification, it's a closed loop. In other words, leachate is maintained inside the loop, even though you're storing it at some times. Yeah,
so it's stored and then continually recycled.
Okay, I'm hoping that answers. You did say it was a below ground.
Below ground double-walled tank.
And made of what material did you say?
It's a reinforced fiberglass.
Thank you. I think we've answered all the questions in those two, but we can see if they follow up with any additional questions. As the there's a question about woody material will be separated and re-enter the process. That's our language in the slides. So is there a digester or chewer machine that manually breaks down the coarse material to allow it to become feedstock?
Yes, all feedstock will come in and go through a shredding unit, and it'll be a similar acceptable items as the municipalities currently have. Not we can't take stumps, but woody debris gets shredded down, and you need that for allowing airflow through the composting process. And then larger stuff gets screened out as it slowly breaks down. But then the overs, or what the woody debris that gets screened out comes back in at the inlet of the composting process.
Thanks, Cole. You're doing great. And I'll just remind you, you can refer questions to your colleagues as well as we go through. Some of them are highly technical, some are not. So let's see how this goes. As the leachate is used and reused during the composting process, does the level of contamination become stronger and stronger? Do these tanks ever need to be flushed out? You've answered that one. What will happen if more leachate is generated than the tanks can hold and be of use? So the first question is, does the level of contamination from the leachate in the leachate become stronger and stronger?
It shouldn't come, we'll have to sample that, but it shouldn't be coming stronger as we go through. It's a negative process of water. So by reusing the leachate, we're also probably going to have to add minimal water as well. And so it is a negative process. And so it shouldn't become any stronger.
So I'm going to ask you again, from a layperson perspective, what do you mean it's a negative process? I don't know what that means.
Yeah, so as the compost process is it's heating up and steam is coming off. And so we're losing more water out than what comes in. And we need a 50 to 60% moisture content to come in. So we'll use the leachate to recycle, and then any supplementary water will come through.
Thank you. I think the other questions have been answered in that question, but let's see. This one's about odor. You stated that the gore cover controls 90 to 95% of the odor. A 2013 report on the compost facility in Seattle using an odor controlling cover titled Odor in a Commercial Scale Compost references a study from 2011, which states, consistent with earlier discussions, the primary pile generated 83% of the odors from piles. This despite an odor controlling cover. 48% of the odor was coming from the compost piles. Despite the covers, you reported at the previous open houses, we're capturing 95% of the odor. So please explain that is the request. That the study shows a different percentage than what you've described is captured by the gore cover.
I guess I would need to see the study referenced. Majority of odors come from the primary process, and gore covers are sufficient to remove odors. And secondary to that, we have a biofilter. You'd have to see what they're quoting as 85% of odors coming from it, if the numbers, but we're confident in the design, and we've used gore covers consistently in our pilot project for the past 8 years.
So kind of an apples to apples comparison if the study shows something related.
Yeah, but if they want to send that through, that would be.
Leona has posted the PDF in the link in the chat box, not for this minute, but so that you can respond.
Yeah, we can get back to you, Leona, on that.
Thank you. Next, will this facility or service include South Courtenay and Royston? And then someone else asks, when will Area D be included?
Let Vivian jump in on rural collection.
So for South Courtenay and Royston, they're considered as part of Area A, and that will be included in the upcoming AAP. But Area D, please correct me if I'm wrong, Mark. I do not believe that is included as part of the process as we move forward.
And pardon me, Vivian, what is an AEP?
Oh, sorry, AAP. It's our alternative approval process, whereby we're going to be going out to the public to determine whether or not, or the public opinion as to whether or not we should be going ahead with the rural roadside collection of garbage and recycling materials. At the onset of this program, as Cole had alluded to, organics is not, food waste specifically is not part of this collection. Yard waste is contemplated right now, and we're currently trying to determine frequency. So we are going to be working with our landfill staff to determine whether or not having a residential drop off for food materials will be able to suffice for the time being until we can work that into the system.
So I hope that answered the question. There's another follow-up question perhaps for you, Vivian. Will you be collecting from multi-dwelling buildings and apartments?
For the time being, the communication that's gone out so far has been primarily surrounding just single-family dwellings for the time being. We will be working with the member municipalities as they work to integrate the the multifamily and ICI sectors.
ICI sectors?
The institutional, commercial, and industrial sectors.
Thanks very much.
Hey, Vince, maybe I can just add something to this part of the conversation, just so that people understand, why we're focused on the municipalities. The four major municipalities, they have very well established curbside collection programs. And these really are the kind of the low hanging fruit in terms of collecting food waste. So this material, the food waste generated within municipalities that have well-established curbside garbage collection services is kind of the easiest food waste to get. And so that's why we're starting with these four major municipalities. And then as the program grows over time, we will consider those rural areas, we'll consider multifamily, and then also ICI, like Vivian mentioned. But the initial focus is definitely on the municipalities.
Okay. Again, if there's any follow-up questions to that or anything we missed, please put it in chat. We'll get back to it. The next seems to be pretty much a statement rather than a question, but it's from Leona. We were told that the setback measure of 300 meters from the proposed facility to the closest residence was taken from the biofilter to the property line. And then we were told it was taken from the primary compost building to the property line. You have used the border furthest from the closest residence, biofilters, or from the center of the compost facility footprint to measure from or with, using the inside operational width of the footprint to enable reaching a 300-meter distance from the closest residence to achieve best practices is not acceptable. As is the case for landfills, the setback distance is taken from the border of the facility footprint closest to the nearest residence at the closest point of that footprint, which in this case is about 200 meters measured on Google and is therefore not best practice. I believe that's a PDF of her measurements, which she's added to the chat box. So it's over to you, Cam, Cole, if you'd like to reply, or if you can promise a review and a reply later on. Cam, Cole or team.
I think we've discussed this in detail, Leona, but the best management practices are based on a broad scale for all commercial industries, running from like 200,000 tons to ours at 15,000 tons, and a variety of technologies, fully enclosed, open windrow, everything like that. So we're working with our team of engineers on odor, the best management practice for odor control, and we're committed on our design, and we're confident in our design. And our measurement was from the primary compost and the biofilter. A lot of the guidelines are actually to the property receptor, which would be the central location of the resident house. But these are all guidelines and further validated through our odor modeling we're going to be ongoing to ensure we meet all compliance.
Okay, I missed a question. I'm going to go back and find that question and put that out. It's not about that topic, but there are other questions about that topic upcoming. So you may have already answered them, but maybe we'll repeat or clarify or add to the discussion. So I missed a question from Catherine McIntosh, which said, have you finalized and locked in the budget for this project, considering current and dramatically rising construction costs? And who pays for this project?
Yeah, we've been working closely throughout the design, working on our cost estimates, and with escalation, the budget is $15.5 million, and we're funded through two grant organizations, and we have about $6.5 million from grants, and the rest comes from reserves. And then for the ongoing operations of the facility, it's run through tipping fees. So member municipalities will be paying based on their tipping fee for the operation of the facility.
A different question, will private trucking companies be able to bring organics from outlying areas?
I guess that we'd have to look at that one more closely. That I guess we'd have to look in that further. If they had a full load of organics, it may work, or if there's a tipping area, but we'd have to see.
Perhaps that's a policy question as much as it is an operational question, but
Yeah.
Mark, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I think you're right, Vince. It is a bit of a combination of things. Operationally, there needs to be capacity, but on the policy side, it would depend a little bit about where the material was coming from, if it met the quality requirements that we're looking for. So there will be some stringent quality requirements imposed on the municipalities for the food and yard waste that comes to this facility. So there's quite a few things to consider before being able to say kind of yes or no to that one. But if there's additional capacity, and if we're not able to fill it through the program with the municipalities, then maybe there's these opportunities, but quite a bit of work to be done to investigate that further.
The next two questions are related again to distance. So first, reports state that setting is the most important consideration when planning a compost facility. This was not given proper consideration in this case. The site was moved from 500 meters away from any residence to a site 200 meters away from a resident. Is there other Crown land the regional district can apply for further from residents? So there seems to be two issues to address there. One a case study or history, and the other a question about other land being available.
Yeah, I think we addressed the distance in the previous question. For the land availability, the initial site was considered was Norwood, and it didn't have the expansion capabilities. And with the adjacent to the Campbell River landfill and the proximity in the industrial area, it's surrounded by multiple landfills in that area, and the efficiencies with reduced trucking for the backhauling of waste, Block J was selected as the most suitable location for the facility.
Okay, a follow-up question similar to the above comment or question. Some general guidelines for minimum buffer distances between compost facilities and sensitive receptors are presented in the Environment Canada 2013 document. For example, the minimum distance between a compost facility and any kind of sensitive receptor is 300 meters. In practice, this has been shown to be inadequate. Quoting from page 16 of a document called Best Odor Management Practices at Composting Facilities, prepared for Metro Vancouver by Morrison Hirschfeld. And then the follow-up question, what is the distance to the nearest neighbor? And can you provide specific regulations or documents you're using to determine best practices?
The best practices are some of those layouts are the 300 meters quoted as to a high density residential area. And we're in an industrial area in a very rural setting. So our closest measurement is one property resident. That's the border property is 300 meters away from the biofilter, which is the potential odor, but their source, but we won't have any odor source due to the use of the goer covers and the biofilter. And is there a second part to that question?
No, well,
Okay.
yes, there is about
Okay.
any particular regulation or document you're using to, when you say best practice, are you
Yeah.
referring to specific? And I know you're really on the spot on this and you're doing your best. If it had to be a follow-up with a link to something you're using or a comparison, that would be, I think, okay. But do your best.
Well, our design engineer team is running through a host of design criteria for this facility and our permitting, and we're conducting environmental impact assessments and odor modeling, and they're working closely with the Ministry of Environment on this facility and what all the regulations there. So there's the OMAR permit that we'll be applying for, and then we're working closely with the Ministry of Environment for this. There's documents out there for best practices and guidelines on this, but they're very general in the sense because they're trying to hit all technologies and all different sizes of compost operations, from small scale, like ours is a relatively small scale. Comparable one is in Abbotsford that uses gourd covers on a property the same size as ours, but produces has an input of 60,000 tons. So it's vastly different, and it can change quite a bit. So it's up to the detailed engineering design for this and the odor modeling.
Thank you. Another question, slightly different topic. What is the lifetime of the facility? How long is it estimated that the expanded facility to 29,000 tons would last? And then there's a follow-up question about, well, it's about lifespan as well, but just the first one. What is the expected lifespan of the facility, and when will it, oh no, how long is it estimated that the expanded facility will last?
Yeah, so it's really dependent on our kind of uptake from municipalities. Right now, when our initial program rollout, our facility is sized for 14,500 tons, and it'll depend on residential buy-in of this, and we're estimating 10 to 20 years for that tonnage, at which time we'd need an expansion on the current site. But there's also opportunities to get the commercial sector and schools and other, how Mark said, the low-hanging fruit. We're going to be working to find uncontaminated food waste sources that we can divert from the landfill to help increase the capacity, and then that will bring us. It's very dependent on how much we can divert, but on the initial footprint is 10 to 20 years, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you. Leona writes, on March 17th, I spoke to a residence next to Abbotsford Net Zero Waste Compost Facility, which you gave as a comparison facility for what is proposed to be built here. I was told about odor issues, rodent issues, and the residence was expecting a visit from the city that day regarding what was described as an effluent drainage issue from the facility. Speaking with residents in the area of the Abbotsford facility, odor presence, airborne emissions, was identified to be more constant at the 500-meter range and intermittent at the 700-meter range. We are being given estimates for a facility that has not been built, but the distance we are given by residents from an existing and comparable facility is a distance in real time. That does not bode well for our residents at 200 or even 300 meters away. And then there's another question about concerns about prevailing winds carrying odors to residents, and if you've considered that.
What was the last question there, Vince? Sorry.
Oh, whether you've considered prevailing winds carrying
Prevailing
the
winds, okay.
odors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for the first question on the net zero waste facility in Abbotsford, as mentioned, they're on a site smaller than ours and have a throughput 4 times our design right now. And not saying, but we also just have received, they run their contract through the city of Abbotsford, and since 2013, they're required to document any odor complaints. And since 2013, there hasn't been any documented odor complaints. We had a letter in 2015 and 2020 from Abbotsford. So they had been operating for 7 years at this facility without any documented odor complaints, but and we're confident in our design here.
Thank you. A different topic this time. What are the estimated annual operating costs?
We're working through that with this design, but we're looking at a tipping fee about of $100 a ton, which is lower than $100 to $120 a ton, which is lower than the waste, which is going to save residents money by diverting organics.
I hope that's clear to people. There is a related question. I'm going to skip one, but come back to it. So the related question is, at the May 11th, 2020 CVRD EASC meeting, it was stated that the Skyrocket compost produced at Cumberland costs $440,000 per year versus sales that generate $50,000 per year. If I have these numbers correct, he says. So what would be the net cost of this facility versus operational costs versus revenue generated? And I think you just touched on that, but I guess they're asking for another statement of net cost, net profit, net loss.
Yeah, I don't have it broken down for that as a comparison for to the Skyrocket operations, but we've kind of got it lumped and then looking at it at a cost per ton, but I could get back to you on that.
That's a valid answer when
Yeah.
something comes up we don't have at our fingertips.
I think, Vince, I might be able to help with this question a little bit. There are, for the organics project, we're looking to develop a tipping fee that covers all of the costs of the organic composting process. So it will be, we're, like Cole said, we're looking at that $100 range that will produce enough revenue across the 14,000 tons to cover all of the costs of operating that facility. For our Skyrocket process, we don't do that at all. We don't generate a tipping fee that covers all of the costs. We're just trying to get back a little bit of revenue from the sale of Skyrocket, but we're not targeting to cover all of the operating costs for that facility. So it's a completely different model in terms of costs for the sewer system and its Skyrocket compost than there will be for this compost project. And like Cole said, we can definitely talk about that more offline and explain that further.
Thanks very much. I'm just going to jump to a couple other questions, making sure we watch time. Catherine McIntosh asks, compost can contain bacteria that can cause foodborne illness, such as Escherichia coli. Will your compost be safe for growing vegetables for human consumption?
Yes, 100%. There's, under the OMAR guidelines, there's a Class A compost. So in our process, we have temperature gauges and air monitors all throughout it. And we have to reach a certain temperature for a number of days within that to ensure it kills any potential harmful things for the public. So it's labeled as a Class A, and it's they've done a lot of pilot projects with our current pilot project on farms, and it's a great product.
Thank you. Ben asks, in regard to annual operational costs, will this be paid for through tax dollars? You mentioned you would be collecting from 30,000 households. So is there an estimated amount that each household will be or is paying for the service?
Yes, it have to pull that. I think it's about $7. I'm just pulling this out of my head, but $7 a household per month, estimated based on tonnages, and a majority of that is collection costs. The municipalities, that includes the collection costs. So we're working with municipalities on, they operate all the collection, and then we'll be charging a tipping fee based on the tonnage for how Mark said to fund the operations of the facility fully, but the collection will be run through municipalities. And then with organics, there's also options like the Village of Cumberland has gone down to bi-weekly garbage and weekly organics because they're on the pilot project. And so there's a savings for residents there by reduction of collection.
Thank you. You're covering a lot of ground tonight. A question from Elaine Jensen. Will each household need to purchase the appropriate bin for pickup? Is it an automated system like Surrey municipality has, or are the bins on a smaller scale?
As part of the program rollout and kind of the public education, we're purchasing a small kind of a countertop bin, And each municipality is looking at their collection options because they hold the contracts for collection. I know municipalities are applying for grants for looking at collection and collection bins. So, and they're working on that. We've been working closely with that, and they're still in that deciding phase right now. And some are looking at an automated or a semi-automated system, and some are still happy with using smaller bins. But it'll be on a case by case for the municipalities.
Thank you. So I'm monitoring questions. We have two more from Leona, and one talks about fire safety. The other talks about what makes up the feedstock. I'd like to encourage the other attendees to put any other questions in the chat. We have about 10 minutes left, so there's time. The next question is, again, about fire safety, so you may want to refer it, I don't know, or handle it. There was a fire at the Abbotsford Net Zero Compost Facility on 10/4/2014, in which 75 feet of the compost pile was burning, identified as a slow burn. The incident identified as fire includes explosion, material, agriculture, and forestry products. Industry must be prepared for fires, especially when yard waste is part of the feedstock. The Abbotsford compost facility is not comparable to the one proposed here in that there are no trees at Abbotsford, which is located in open flat land and equipped with city water. The area around the proposed compost facility here is forest. Hydrants are needed. It would be horrific if a fire traveled northeast to residences. Also, if fire reached the crowns of the trees, it could potentially burn Elk Falls Park down to the river, or over to the river. Hydrants and pumping capability is needed on site, which I was previously told would not be installed. This needs to be reconsidered. Do you want to address the fire safety planning, fire safety studies, fire safety facilities issues?
Yeah, so our design carefully within the gore covers, it's carefully monitoring the moisture. It's controlling the amount of air through the facility, temperature, pile size, and we follow best management practices. To have municipal water on a site that's removed enough isn't, you're kind of getting caught between two sides. If you want municipal water, you're right downtown, and if you want it out of town, then we're not covered under that. And we're going to be working closely with the City of Campbell River and their fire department on our development permit process and any requirements, and we'll be following best management practices. Fires can happen at compost facilities, but a large portion of those are due to not following best management practices and storage of a yard waste 10 meters high or something like that. That is, but by following it, you drastically reduce any risks, and we'll have a fire management plan on site.
Thank you. I think there's just one more question I can see so far. I hope I haven't missed anybody. The next question is, will the feedstock include fish morts? I imagine that's mortalities during fish farming, or dead animals.
No, we'll be very selective on commercial feedstock coming into this, and we're highly aware of odor concerns. Fish morts would not be an acceptable input on this facility just due to odor concerns. But we'll be looking at other commercial opportunities, such as like schools and restaurants of uncontaminated sources that we can bring on board and divert organics from.
Okay, well, we've got one additional question that just popped in. What specific gases are produced in the composting process?
Leroy, can you clarify gases?
Yeah, are they odor producing gases or?
Sorry, Cole. No, just it gets confusing because you're reading the different, or we're reading the different reports from different areas, and they all seem to speak of different things, and then it sometimes relates into greenhouse gases, into the aspect that composting is a good thing because you're offsetting the release of methane, which is a 21 times greenhouse gas, et cetera, et cetera. And then other reports will say, oh, there's things like benzene and toluene and or all kinds of words. So that's what I was just wondering if you had a list of, I really wasn't able to see them in any of the research I was looking at that sort of listed them all or listed the worst ones, or, so I was hoping you knew the answer. I was fishing
Yeah.
a bit. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I don't have that off the bat, but like, so when organics go into the landfill and decompose anaerobically without oxygen, that's when our methane, which we call landfill gas, is produced. And it's very harmful. As you quoted, it's like 21 to 25 times worse than carbon dioxide for a greenhouse gas. And so by us removing that and composting this with an aerated system, those gases are diverted from the landfill or from production. And then, so benzene, toluene, like, I don't have a list of what's produced off of that, but those are natural occurring compounds that happen in decomposing. And they are scary words, but biofilters and the Gore covers aid in removing all these compounds.
Thanks, Cole.
Yeah.
I am going to interrupt just because we're about finished and there's a couple more questions. From Ben, will dog waste be accepted? Will plastics be accepted?
No, yeah. Usually these systems, pet wastes aren't accepted just because it turns into a biosolid system. And the organic bags are usually more of a problem and won't be accepted in this system just because the process is 6 weeks of composting, which is a fast compost system. And those bags take too long to decompose in a commercial composting system and cause more issues on the product quality. So you end up having bag pieces undecomposed on the back end, and it's not a great product for residents.
Thank you. So watching time, I think I'm going to flag to Christiane to start the poll. We have a small poll for people to participate in, as I have already screen shared the last slide, which talks about next steps. And so we're now asking, where did you come from? So we can collect data on who participated in that simple poll. So if everyone could enter that. And there's also a question about how did you hear about the meeting? So while you're doing that, I'll reply or just review the last slide. We will be posting this meeting video and the Q&A transcript and any additional questions on the project website shortly. We'll also respond on an ongoing basis, the team will, to any emails or any phone calls regarding further information and or any questions that remain or that occur to you later. There's an email address, communications@comoxvalleyrd.ca for you to use. Of course, we're moving ahead with the detailed design process, as Cole mentioned, using input and trying to shape the best possible application. And we'll use all this information and the design and the public input to submit that to the BC Ministry of Environment and Climate Change strategy in support of the regulatory applications for the project to move ahead. So I see that the poll is being completed nicely. There's a few others of you to jump in. 7 of 13 have done it. We'll give there's another minute or so there. And I'd like to thank you for your time today, everyone. And anything we missed, we'll get back to you as we can. And please stay connected to the project and the portal. Thanks to the team for answering. And I think we can close it.